And thank you for sharing that question. And shall we take our next call, please? Good evening. Welcome to Open Forum.
What verse, and I'm not arguing with you, I'm just asking, what verse can you use or do you use to say that you do not believe that God works through the churches today?
What verse? Oh, there are a host of verses, but for example, we read in Matthew 24, verse 15, when you see the abomination of desolation standing in the holy place, then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Now, when we read Matthew 24 and understand it accurately, we find the whole chapter is talking about a period of great tribulation that will be the last great period before Judgment Day itself, because in verse 29 it says, immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened and the moon will not shine, and so on. And it describes in verse 24, for example, there will be great tribulation, such as this world has never known nor ever shall know. And so both from the context of chapter 24, as well as a lot of other information that feeds into this from other parts of the Bible, we know it's a final period of time that during which God's wrath has come on the local congregations and also is coming on the world itself. And in verse 15, God points directly to that. The holy place, the only holy place for 1955 years, according to the timeline we find from the biblical information, the holy place has been the churches, because they were divinely ordained by God to be the custodian, the caretaker of the Bible, and to evangelize the world, to go out into the world with the gospel, with the Bible. And now the abomination of desolation is standing there. And when we search that out in the Bible, we find that is a reference to Satan being there. And we wonder, well, where did that come from? Or how does that work? And we go to a passage like 2 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 3, where it speaks about a time when the man of sin, who can be shown to be Satan himself, will take his seat, that is, he will rule. That to take one seat is a biblical way of speaking about ruling. He will rule, to take his seat in the temple. And the temple, like Judea, like Jerusalem, is a figure of the external representation of the kingdom of God, which before the time of Christ was national Israel, but after the time of Christ, the external representation of the kingdom of God was the local congregations, because they were now the caretaker of the Bible, and they now are spiritually called Jerusalem or Judea or the temple. And so Satan now has taken his seat. He is ruling there, and that is why the abomination of desolation is there. And so God says in Matthew 24, verse 15, that let those who are in Jerusalem or in Judea flee to the mountains. And we know the mountains are used in the Bible as a synonym or as a symbol of the kingdom of God, like we read in Psalm 121. To the mountains or to the hills will I lift mine eyes, from whence cometh my help. And so we flee to Christ, but we get out of the churches. Now this just happens to be one verse, but there are many, many passages as we go through Jeremiah, for example. It is, that whole book is talking about our day. It's really a New Testament book par excellence. It's almost like today's newspaper, as once we understand and follow the rules that God gives us for reading the Bible, namely that Christ spoke in parables. That is, He gave earthly stories with heavenly meanings, and we always have to find the spiritual meaning.